everybody. Good morning here in our webinar, in the 8th Job to be Done webinar, where we want to share with you the principles of jobs to be done thinking and the outcome-driven innovation process. Today we have a very special guest here, is Robert Andexer from MACO Corporation, and he will share. Hello, Robert. Good morning. And Robert will share his viewpoints of a decade of innovation and the job to be done as a guideline for groundbreaking innovation in the building and construction industry. And before we jump into this, I would like to give you an overview of the agenda. So we will start off with a short introductory. Then I will share the power of jobs to be done theory with you. So what is jobs to be done actually? And outcome-driven innovation as a process. And when we explain to you and introduce you to the outcome-driven innovation process, we will do this based on the real case example of Meyer and Co. Meyer and Co Beschläge, and share that with you. Having said that, there is also a case study available. Daniela is sharing a link to that with you. And you can also download the full case study from our website. Now, we will also share some viewpoints about integrating ODI into your organization and do a wrap up after 1 hour. And now, my name is Martin, and I have been working with Robert on exactly that project. And I would like to hand over now to Robert, who is currently head of business unit for door and services. Robert, your stage.
Thank you, Martin. So good morning also from my side. It's a pleasure for me to again have a webinar or a talk with Edizon and being able to present that wonderful project. Just a short summary of my person, the company, and the product. So my name is Robert Andexer. I'm 41 years old now, married, I have 2 kids, and I'm a little bit over 16 years already now with MACO, and as Martin already mentioned, I'm responsible for the business unit door and service currently. MACO is a Austrian company, family owned, founded 75 years ago, and the headquarters is in Salzburg. We do have 5 production plants, 3 of them in Austria, 1 in Russia, and 1 in Poland. We have 15 sales subsidiaries, and we are serving customers in over 40 markets, mainly in Europe. We do have a little bit of business in South America, in Asia, but mainly I would say 98% of our business is based in Europe. And the products are divided in 3 business units. So we are producing hardware for windows, for doors, and sliding elements. It's those big sliding elements where we can open our rooms to the outside. We are a classical hardware supplier, B2B supplier. We produce out of raw materials, wonderful window and door fittings, supply them to the industries where the manufacturers produce windows and doors with our hardware. My core product is the multi-point security door lock, which you can see here on the picture, and also for the UK market, the fittings for outward opening windows. As I said, the products nowadays are still primarily mechanical solutions with big twist currently going on towards mechatronical and automized products. Today we want to give you insight in ODI, in a job to be done project we've done back in 2010 to 2012 together with Edizon. And this is part of a keynote I was invited to hold last year in the Job to be Done Summit for Edizon. And as you can see in that keynote, I've tried to pack 10 years innovation story into a 20 minutes talk. And out of this talk today, we want to present the ODI UK project. why did we do that project, or why did we have to do that project back in the days? In the UK market, we had all the reasons together why you should start projects like this. We used to be a market leader in the hardware fitting industry, but we changed to a market loser. So, for example, we lost in 2005, we sold $300,000 and we dropped down to just $80,000 in 2009. So we really had a tough position in the market, increasing competition also from the Far East. We had no real innovation for many years, and a lot of dissatisfied customers. Then when you think about how can you change that, we realized, okay, we do not really know what to do. We had no market insights and a constant price pressure. So everything was there to act. And we defined back then the project targets, and it was quite ambitious targets. We did want to increase market position in the next 5 years from 38 to 50% market share, regain lost market share, increase price competitiveness. So we have clearly defined the production cost we want to have with the new products, reduce product range, also very important, and develop a product that is protected for being copied. So innovation was one key project target combined with patents and reinforcing our position as the most innovative window and door lock hardware supplier in the UK market. That was the starting point of all that. Martin, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Robert. And that was the point in time when we get to know each other. I want to just briefly introduce our team that you can see here on the picture. We are located in Austria and strongly connected with our partner in the US. The company is called Edizon, and Tony Alvik, who created the outcome-driven innovation framework back in the early 90s of the last century already. And there has been a lot of publications, books that were made, and you can see some of them here on this slide. It's also possible to download literature from our website and from Edizon's website that you can see also in the slide deck and in the handout. Now, to give you a summary of what's inside of those publications and what's the essence of our framework, I want to share this very sharp definition about innovation. So what is innovation? It is actually a solution for a need. And as simple as this sounds, as complicated it gets once you are trying to fix it and to resolve that equation. So what an innovator needs to do is to, first of all, understand what the needs are in a market, and then also how relevant these needs are, and which of the many needs that customers typically have are the most relevant ones for the biggest share of the population of customers, and how well are they satisfied. So there's a lot of questions around needs, and once you have fixed that, you need to find and create a solution, and that can be the heavy lifting in the innovation equation, as many of you might know. And we want to make sure to get it right the first time and to create exactly the right solution that fits the right need. And to do that, our viewpoint is, first of all, the needs part of that equation. And ultimately, what we need to gain, what we need to achieve is to define a need as a stable element in that equation. So a need shall not be a moving target, but it must be stable over time. And that was the basic idea and the basic element of outcome-driven innovation and our framework. And Tony Alvik, he found an input into that to really be able to frame a need as a stable element in that equation when looking at jobs to be done thinking. And he teamed up with Clayton Christensen, a Harvard professor, and shared his viewpoints with him. And then together they came up with what we need to talk about is the process that the customer wants to get done, and ultimately the job to be done as the unit of analysis. So to use that quote that many of you might know, people don't want to have a drill, they want to have a hole in the wall. So we shall not look at the solution firsthand, not looking at the drill firsthand, but to change perspective when it comes to innovation and try to understand what is the underlying job, the underlying process that people want to get done. And when we shift over that perspective and we change that perspective, it changes a lot of elements in our discussion. We realize that people buy products and services only to get jobs done. And when we make the job the unit of analysis, it also gains a different understanding of markets, of needs, of opportunities, segments, and ultimately also of strategy questions when you look at a business through a jobs to be done lens. Now, this is, so to say, the philosophical part of the concept, but there's also a process for it. And this process is called the outcome-driven innovation process. It consists of actually 6 steps, and it starts off with defining a market around the job to be done. It then goes on to really understand the job to be done and zoom in into the different elements of needs that people have when they want to get a job done, and tries to fully understand all the needs that are there in the market in step 2. And when we know all the needs that are there in the market, really a comprehensive set of all the needs, we can then go ahead and quantify the needs, which is happening in step 3, to identify how well these needs are already served and how relevant they are for the people. And when we have that data in place, it's then possible in step 4 to zoom in on that data set and derive hidden segments of customers. So to say, groups of customers that have very specific answering patterns and very specific priorities when it comes to their needs. And putting all that together, the full understanding of all the needs, the full job map, plus the priorities and the segments, we can then in step 5 formulate and deploy a winning strategy together with the whole organization. And finally, implement this strategy by generating ideas, creating concepts, coming up with better marketing positioning, with better messaging, better sales tools, and you name it, a lot of things that are happening there. And now we will run through this process in a nutshell, and I will give you a short glance on what was this, or how was this applied within Maya & Co. Now, starting off with with defining the market from a jobs to be done perspective, we understand that a market is to be defined as a group of people and the job they're trying to get done. Be aware, there is no product mentioned in a market definition when you look at the market from a jobs to be done perspective. And there are basically 2 guiding questions. The first question is, whom do we want to create value for? For what people out there do we want to create value? That's the first guiding question when coming up with a jobs-based market definition. And the second guiding question is, and what is the job that we want to create value for? So once we understand who the target group is that we want to create value for, we shall then also ask what the job is that these people are trying to get done. And in the case of Maya & Co., we were using a value chain approach, a value chain perspective, to drill down the value chain that the company was in, that this B2B company was in. And we saw that there are manufacturers of windows and doors that have a very high benefit out of the products of MACO, because these products are used when, like producing windows, and they need to fix windows in their frames. So we were looking and zooming in within these value chain steps into that step of the value chain that was the biggest lever for the business of Meyer & Co. And where Meyer & Co. could create the highest value and was creating the highest value. At least that was the ambition. And within that value chain step, it's then relevant to really zoom in on the people that you find in that value chain step. So it's not about selecting companies, it's about selecting people who really try to get a certain job done. And these people within these manufacturers of windows and doors were production managers and foremen, where we said we want to focus on exactly those people. Now, this is the first part of that market definition. And we defined that window and door production managers shall be the group of people to create value for. Now, and what is the job to be done? Now, there is an important trap that you might want to step in when you apply. First of all, job to be done thinking. Very often people ask, what is the job that my product does? So actually, what is the technical function of my product? What is my product doing? But that's not the best kind of question that you should bring in here. It's better to ask not what your product is currently doing, but to ask what job is the customer trying to get done when they use the product. And this guiding question, what job is the customer trying to get done, then triggered also an insight here. And we realized, okay, it's production managers who are responsible for production. And what is the job that they're trying to get done? Actually, it's installing the locking mechanism of windows and doors. And this is the job that they want to get done when it comes to the products of Meyer & Co. And so this discussion that we had there and these viewpoints on customers then generated this market definition here that we were framing the market as window and door production managers who want to install the locking mechanism of an outward opening window. A very, very sharp and clear definition of the job and the job executors. And Robert, maybe you want to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Martin. So the first step, I would say, never underestimate this very first step. First of all, it's very interesting because you can immediately start whatever product you are producing, whatever customers you're serving. The ODI theory and concept enables you to analyze that in a different picture immediately. That's interesting. So try it out. Think about what are the job executors in your industry. What is your real customer, and try to define what's the job your product is a solution for currently. So that's very interesting. And why you should not underestimate that step is, and I remember back then it took us 2 days for the supply chain analysis and defining the right job executor, because supply chain analysis is so important, because of course the customer is with the window and door manufacturer, it's clear. But if you look at the other players in the supply chain, you then identify potential customers for further studies or for further projects to gain insights, because it might have a big impact on your business, on your product. And second, on the job executor, it's not that easy, because you need people who do have the overview over the whole process. You at the same time need people who are able to really tell you about the pain points, or the or being able to have those interviews with you. So in the end, it could be a purchase manager, a production manager. It could be the guy on the shop floor actually installing the product to a window or door. But in the end, you need to find those people who do have the overview over the process and who are able to tell you about to answer the questions you have for them.
Yeah. Now, question is a keyword here. I would also like to invite you to put your questions that may arise here during the webinar, that you put some questions, statements, comments also in the chat window. And we will use this input then at the end of the webinar to probably pick some out of them and discuss it and give you answers right away. Apart from that, if you have questions, of course, that go beyond what the content of a chat window, please just drop us an email, either directly to Robert or to myself, and we will be happy also to get back to you then afterwards. Now, having discussed the step first, and this is extremely crucial to get the market definition right and to understand what the markets are that you are in. Typically, a company is not only active in one market in terms of one group of executors and one job to be done. That can be many different types of stakeholders in a business. And it's a good idea to really map that out, as Robert said. Now, once you have selected a group of people that you want to create value for, of course, you want to understand the needs that these people have. And to really understand needs, we call these needs desired outcomes, we also use a certain framework. And this framework looks like this here on that slide. What you can see here is basically 5 different pillars in that job to be done framework. These pillars, we call them types of jobs. So there's 5 different types of jobs. The first one, the most important one, is the core functional job that we want to understand really closely. And that core functional job is what you already defined in the market definition. So that's the core functional job. But apart from that, we also realize that there are related jobs that people want to get done. So while they are trying to get their core job done, there are some related jobs that they also want to get done, most probably. You want to understand those related jobs because that could be a starting point, a trigger to create new solutions and probably new services and ultimately new business around related jobs. Then there are emotional jobs. So you also want to understand the emotional dimensions, how people want to feel when they get a core job done, what feelings they want to avoid, what negative feelings they probably have when they try to get a core job done. You want to understand those emotions because you can use that then also for communication and for marketing and for positioning to communicate also on the emotional benefits that people have from better solutions. Then you want to understand the consumption chain jobs. Consumption chain jobs are a similar thing to what you probably know as a customer journey. So it's everything that involves your product, like purchasing your product, receiving your product, installing your product, setting up your product. That's not the essence of the core job, but this is something that people have to do if they want to use a product. And you can, of course, make that more easy for people and less stressful. And you want to understand that these dimensions as well, we call them consumption chain jobs. So everything that really involves a product, a physical product, and where people need to handle a product, we consider that as a consumption chain job. And finally, there are financial outcomes. That's the buyer's job. So people need to take a buying decision for a certain solution. And we also want to understand the commercial and the financial criteria that they apply when they select a certain solution to get a core job done. And in many cases, especially in B2B environments, the buyer is a different group of people than the core job executor. And you want to consider that as well. And so it may happen that you end up with understanding or analyzing the core job executor in getting the core job done, the buyer in taking a buying decision, and maybe the one or the other consumption chain executor in probably maintaining the product, delivering the product, installing the product. So these are the different dimensions that you may want to consider when you really want to innovate a whole business. But let us now focus and concentrate on the core functional job and how to better understand that. For that, we use, and this is also publicated, there's also a link here to Harvard Business Review, the customer-centered innovation map. This model here exactly describes how to analyze a job. And a job is to be understood as an ideal description of what the customer tries to get done. And we have learned that you can boil down any job to be done in these 8 logic steps. So every job needs to be defined and planned beforehand. People need to locate and gather information and resources. They need to prepare and organize for execution. They want to be able to confirm and verify that they can execute, that everything is in place. They want to execute the job to be done. So that's really, so to say, the execution, doing it. They want to be able to monitor whether they can achieve what they have planned for. And they want to be able to modify in case that the monitoring tells them that the execution does not deliver what it should. And finally, people want to also be able to conclude the job to be done at a certain point. And you want to understand, when is the job done? So what's the point in time? What's the moment when people say, I'm done with my job? Because when you put in that guiding questions, you will really get a full understanding, a comprehensive understanding of the whole job to be done. And it's already defined in its ideal way. So what it is that people want to achieve when getting the job done. It's not necessarily the actual process that they run through. It's the ideal situation that people want to achieve. And having applied this to the process of installing a locking mechanism of an outward opening window, you can also drill that one down into these 8 logic steps that you can see here. So it's about defining window components, locating those components, preparing them, providing the components for fitting, installing actually the locking mechanism. That's the execution part. Then monitoring whether the function of the locking mechanism performs, adjusting probably, and then finalizing that installation job. And actually, we were putting in 55 interviews to fully understand that job map and all the desired outcomes related to it, which was not the typical situation. Ideally or typically, and out of experience, it is possible to come up with that full needs model based on 15 to 20 interviews as well. But maybe, Robert, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, what's really important to mention here is, so before you go to this job executors and have those interviews, you create your universal job map. You define the job, you define that process steps, and you think you have the right job definition, the right process steps, and the right definition of each process step. But you do not know if you got it right. So you go out and have those interviews. And 2 things are very important. First of all, back then we thought, okay, we can do those interviews on our own, and we do want to do those interviews on our own because we want to involve our sales reps and our people to get in touch with this concept and to get the first-hand answers from the job executors. And so we did it, we tried it, but I can tell you it did not really work as we've thought it should. So we asked Edizon to go with us. And I can tell you it's good if you do a project like that for the first time. Let Edizon be in the driving seat and you're next to them, but they have the lead. And then with the second project, you can be in the driving seat and you want to have Edizon next to you. And maybe the third project you can do on your own. But it's important to know that the technique, the interview technique to get the outcome statements right is something which is you cannot do at the first place on your own, I would say. Second, when you do those interviews, you verify your universal job map, the job and the process steps, and that's a very interesting point in time because for the first time, then you really get after each interview a more precise, a more universal job map where you know, okay, that's actually really what's going on with your product, with your current solution, fulfilling the job out there.
Yeah. And Robert, one more comment to this job map and the essence of it when it comes to strategy creation. You can already derive a business vision, a long-term business vision out of this job map model. And the guiding question here is, how can you get the whole job done on a single solution platform and get it done measurably better and cheaper for the job executor? So that's a guiding question. And that's the point in time when you try, or when you will start to map your existing solutions and services against that job map. Try to understand what of that job steps is already served with existing solutions. Where do you have solutions and services in place? And what do you need to do? What would be the future vision of a future platform that will get the whole job done for the job executor better and cheaper? And that already triggers a lot of strategy and inspiration. And now let's come to the next important question in the whole approach here. And that question is, how can we get the job done better? And there are three metrics involved here, three guiding questions. How can we get the job done faster? How can we get the job done more predictable with less variability? And how can we get a job done with higher output and throughput? And these are the three types of desired outcomes, as it is called outcome-driven innovation. And now, how is this formulated? We use a certain syntax, a certain logic to really formulate a need statement. And it's always formulated in the exact same way. People want to minimize the time it takes or the likelihood that something is happening that should not happen, or the time it takes to achieve something. This is explained in way more detail in the books and in the publications, but it should also show you here that what we are not doing is we do not mention a technical solution. We do not mention a feature. We just formulate how a customer is measuring their success in getting the job done. So that's a metric that you can measure as well. And any future product, any future service needs to be better in each of those dimensions. And this is how you can measure a product and a solution with a need that is independent of the solution and that is independent of the time and independent of geographies. So these need statements are valid worldwide, globally, for everybody who tries to get a job done, the same job done. As long as it's the same job, it's the same need, and the need is stable over time. This is what I wanted to share with you. And to give you a little bit more color to that, I want to share, or we want to share, two of these example outcome statements of that MACO needs model that you can see here, like very, very clearly defined need statements, but that are free of solutions. And having said that, ultimately you will achieve here in that research step, in this qualitative research, a needs model that gives you all the job steps and also all the metrics, how people measure their success in getting each of these steps done. And this is the desired outcomes that you now get for each job step. Getting it faster, getting it more predictable, and with higher output and throughput. Now, this is what you gain out of the qualitative research. Now you have a full set of needs of all the job dimensions, of all the outcomes in place. And typically this is possible to achieve already with 15 to 20 qualitative interviews. And now we are in the right setting to quantify which of those outcomes are really unmet. And here we want to come up with an opportunity landscape. The quantification runs in a very structured way as well. So you put all the outcome statements, really it was 89 statements we found here with MACO for that selected job. You put all these approximately 100 statements in a questionnaire. So that's a long questionnaire. People will take about an hour to fill that in. And for each of these outcomes, you only give them 2 questions. How important is that for you? And how satisfied are you with your ability to achieve that? So this is the 2 dimensions that you want to know and that you get then out of the questionnaires. And the results are presented in a so-called opportunity landscape, where you can see these 2 axes, importance on the horizontal line and satisfaction on the vertical. And every dot that you can see in that graph here, every dot is one desired outcome, evaluated by all of the customers that you have carved that questionnaire out. That should be ideally approximately 250 job executors that you want to invite here. Sometimes it's not that much, sometimes it's even more than that. It depends on the market that you're in and the effort that you want to invest into creating these questionnaires. But what you have here now is you have a clear understanding of which of those needs are underserved on the very right-hand side. They are extremely important and not very well served with existing solutions. This is a big opportunity for value creation. And then you can also see overserved needs. They are not so important for the customers, but extremely well satisfied with existing solutions. Here we talk about overserved needs, and they are typically ripe for disruption. So here you may come in with disruptive innovation approaches to reduce the performance of a solution and same time make it even cheaper and less costly for the customer. That would be a very disruptive innovation approach. And you have 2 sides of the medal in front of you here. So innovation is not only about creating higher value by creating more performance, but also creating higher value by reducing cost for things that are not relevant for the customers. And to give you an understanding of how this questionnaire was looking like here in the MACO case, you can see the outcome statements that you just saw before, now in the questionnaire with these 2 answering dimensions inside. And additional to that, what you also want to ask people in such a questionnaire is so-called profiling criteria. So you want to understand what we also call the complexity factors that you have learned about. So what makes the job extremely complex or less complex? What are profiling information around the job executor, around the situation when they execute the job to be done? This information here, this profiling criteria, are an essential part of the later analysis and of identifying true hidden customer segments that you can then profile based on this information. Now, what did it generate? Here you can see the job map that MACO found. And what you can see here is, on the one hand, there's a lot of needs that are overserved with existing solutions. These are the needs on the left-hand side, left top. But there's also needs that are highly underserved still in that market. And now this information, of course, can trigger a lot of consequences from the viewpoint of a solution provider. Additionally to this opportunity landscape, we also created a fever curve. We call it like this, as it looks like this. The fever curve is a process picture, and it shows you one step after the other of that job map, and it shows you in which of these job steps do you have the highest opportunities. And what you can see here is that in the very beginning of the process, there is higher opportunities, and at the end of the process, there is rather high opportunities in that fever curve. So you also understand, when looking at the whole process that the customer tries to get done, where are the biggest issues. Robert, I would suggest that you jump in with comments later on in your finalization part then, and I will go ahead now just to make sure we can capture it in time. Now, when we have all the data in place, we can also try to discover hidden segments of opportunity. So segments of customers that you do not see on the surface. as you might know and might agree that not all job executors are really alike. And now that we have this database in place, we can zoom in the data and do a statistical analysis of all the questionnaires that we got in, do a factor analysis, cluster analysis, and see what the data tells us. So it's not a segmentation that we just like validate. It's a segmentation that is only told to us by the data, by looking with statistical methods at the statistical data. And this generated, also in this case, different segments of opportunity. Now you can see here this schematic example of a job, of an opportunity landscape with 3 different segments of customers inside. So they have different answering patterns. You also know the size of these segments. And a similar picture was turned out here with MACO. And you can see that on the right-hand side, that we identified 3 different segments of customers. And there was one segment that was determined by the profile criteria and the complexity factor of high automatization. So customers who have a very high automatization in their production plant have a different set of opportunities than those customers who have a very low level of automatization in their sites. Now that we have understood all of that, and now that we know what the hidden segments are and what the biggest opportunities are in that market, we were able to really go into a discussion of a winning strategy, measures to take, and align the organization around these insights that we generated. And to give you an overview of that in a picture, what's happening here is that you start off with the biggest opportunities in a market, the unmet customer needs, and in the total market, but also in the customer segments, and you share that with your organization. And you share that with those people, with those teams who are responsible for product strategy and product management. You share it with those teams who are responsible for digital strategies, digitalization, digital transformation, as you might name it, digital services. You share it with them. You share it with those people who are responsible for business model innovation and business model strategy, and also for those who are responsible for marketing and marketing strategy. And ideally, you put that all together in one room. Can also be virtual room, of course, and have a common understanding, a common discussion, and make sure that your whole organization is aligned on a common understanding of what the biggest opportunities are in the market. And when you have achieved that, you have really achieved a lot, because based on this common understanding, it's rather logic and very focused to come up with measures to take, with measures for each of these functional areas in an organization. And this was also happening with MACO. The final step then in the process is a handover into generating ideas and creating concepts, a handover into marketing, a handover into other organizational areas. And I would like to hand over now to Robert to give you the possibility to summarize this and share your experiences on that.
Thanks, Martin. So from that, also from bit theoretical inputs, the question is now, if you get that data, and I have to say that's a real wow moment when you get the results of the analysis. You have this big pool of data, and the question now is, how do you bring that down into your company, to your team, and in the end, how do you create ideas out of that data? And how it works is, from analyzing the results, also looking at that market segment, at that data cuts, what Martin showed you, that opportunity landscapes, they are already broken down to, in our case, to those manufacturers who are highly automized, who do have more than one profile systems, who do have a big influence on market share because it's the big companies. That's been that turned out to be the interesting customer segment for us. So we clearly defined this segment as key in our growth strategy. We realized, okay, there is many opportunities for value engineering. our products basically over-engineered for the UK market. We also saw these opportunities for radical innovation, and we clearly defined this is also what we want to go for. And we saw things, when you remember the fever curve, we saw, okay, at the very beginning of the process, for example, and in the end, there are areas where we knew already there are opportunities for service products. So this is what we've defined, and that's a very important step before you go further in that process. Then the question is, if you have those teams, and we had cross-functional teams, we had product managers, we had sales representatives, we even had trainees, we had people from the quality department, so really people from all around the company. We brought together in this ideation team, and we tried to now summarize those results from the analysis, the outcomes, into uh, uh, into themes and descriptions that are that can be understood by everyone. So that's key, because if you give them the outcome statements, and as you have seen, they might not be, if you read them for the first time, the best input for a product engineer, for example. So we defined those 6 themes, which were reduce complexity, avoid errors, improve assembly efficiency, reduce handle forces, maintain performance, and reduce impact of errors. So all the outcome statements, especially those with big opportunities, both on the innovation side and also on the over-engineered value engineering side, we've brought together in those themes and described them for the ideation team. Out of that ideation process, which took us about 4 months, we created over 100 ideas. This was incredible. Based on those themes, based on this description of unserved needs, our teams created, both for the door sector and the window sector, over 100 ideas, very nicely described, sketched, as you can see here. What you do then is you have all those ideas and concepts. You need to bring them into a more, you need to break them down, you need to cluster them, and try to get total concepts. That's what we've done. In the end, we had these 6 total concepts, and of course we rated them. And this is now a key moment where you go back to those outcome statements, to those customer benefits, those unserved needs out of the study, and look which outcome statements, which process steps do your concepts really help? Where do we make things better with those concepts? And as you can see here, there's always, I think that that's quite general. You will always have ideas for short-term solutions, like especially on the value engineering side. Okay, you have ideas. How can you engineer your products down by still contributing to serving more unserved needs in the market? And you will have those more radical ideas. We defined it as long-term concepts where this goes in the more radical, innovative way. And as you can see, we selected then 2 concepts, one for the door business, one for the window business, 2 concepts that have been judged as short-term, or one for short-term realization, one for long-term, and one radical concept, the horse head at the very right side. The horse head idea, just to mention that very quickly, was the birth or the start of this 10-year innovation story I've mentioned earlier, where we, out of that idea, in the end developed a fully mechatronical door lock solution, which we are able now to present to the market this year. and which is also one key message from my side, that out of a project like this, you have the chance to really create radical innovation for your customers. And to summarize the ODI project in the UK back then, what's been the results on one picture? First of all, we created service innovation. We found out that our customers, they need further services alongside our hardware to be able to sell to their customer clients. So we created MACO Secure Plus, a service package for our customers with a 10-year warranty for our products, 24-hour service line, alarm response service, something really added to our total solution for our customers. That was something also something like a quick win. So it didn't take us too long to realize that, just only a few months. And so after a few months, we already had the first realized results out of that ODI project. Second, we created both one window fitting and one new door lock in only 15 months, by the way. That was a record time in engineering and realization in our company. So a new window in the hardware and a new door lock. We were able to save 20 to 40% in production costs. So it was really reverse engineered or down engineered to only or especially fit the UK market. We were able to reduce the variants down from 7 to 4 in the Windows sector, for example. And we had major improvements in functionality and security, again, especially for the UK market. So this being products we were already able to launch in 2012 and 2013. So not too long ago after the ODI project. And a third result out of that, again, was an idea for a real radical innovation, the horsehead idea. So a new locking mechanism, a totally new locking mechanism. It works like a handcuff locking mechanism, which then went into this little black box down the table, and after many years, really transferred into a concept, a prototype, and now finally a real product we have now and we launch to the market. So it's also important for me to mention when you do a project like that, is it only that you get this data that you are able then to base ideation on this data and create a new potentially innovative product, or is there more you can get out of a project like this? And I want to tell you it's way more, and I've tried to summarize it here on that slide. If you do it right and if you are successful with a project, of course you can do it for other product ranges in need. We did install something like a quick ODI process in the UK and in the headquarters, because the basic idea which Martin explained to you earlier in that webinar, it's so in a way easy and so powerful if you try to break down the market, if you try to find out what's the job your product is actually trying to fulfill nowadays, and you can do that in a more faster way, of course, in a less statistical and scientific way, but still the basic philosophy you can use to find out in a quick way pain points of products you are selling nowadays. You also get this deep and universal market insights, and it's not only for this period in time, as I've tried to tell you with the horsehead idea. 5 years later, when we founded the business unit, we went back to the results of that 2010 project took them and really thought about, okay, if we want to be innovation leader, how can we do that? And we looked at that radical concept, the horsehead idea, and transformed it into a product. So having mentioned that, drive and acceleration of organizational changes, I would say without that project in 2010, or let me put it that way, that project in 2010 also added to that organizational changes massively. It also added to the definition of our corporate strategy nowadays. We as MACO, not only in the business unit door, as MACO, we define innovation leadership as one key path in our corporate strategy. And we're on the way to transform our reputation, or with an ODI project, you're able to transform your reputation in the market and what you stand for in the industry. And most important, in the end, what we all want is groundbreaking innovation. And I would say we've really achieved it with that horsehead idea. I've summarized it in that nice picture here, which you can see here. It's also that quote of getting in touch with very first time in 2009 in an ODI seminar with Martin. That quote really summarizes the power of the ODI method. And what you can see here, the head here of that horse is the horsehead idea. And this year in 2022, we are able to launch a fully mechatronical, fully optimized, completely radical, innovative door locking mechanism into our markets. Martin, a few minutes left.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Every time I listen to you, it's very inspiring. I really like it, and I would like to invite everybody to just look at the website, at the Maya & Co, the MACO website, and it's also a more clearly description of the whole thing and also of the solution that came out of it in the case study that you can download, of course. And let me also mention now further touch points that we have before we go probably very briefly on some of your questions. If you want to further zoom in on that framework, there's a lot of literature out there. You can see these recommended books here also for free download from our website and the strategy website. There's the Job to be Done Institute Europe. We have created that institution together with Tony Alvik, where we share competencies, where we share viewpoints on that methodology, where you can train yourself and have your team trained on applying job to be done thinking and outcome-driven innovation in very different formats. There's even an e-learning format that we are offering here. And I would like to also invite you to the Job to be Done Summit. That will happen very soon, March 30 to 31st in Vienna and also online. And let's see how we can probably get together there in person again in Vienna. And by the way, there will be the Job to be Done award also given within that summit. It's a community event of the whole Job to be Done community throughout Europe, and I would say also beyond Europe. And now Robert and MACO got and won the Job to be Done award last year, and that's why I think you can understand why. And there's a lot of things that probably Robert would also like to share with you, and I think he's happy to interact on this with you as well. Now. Before I say thank you, Robert, let us briefly look at the questions that we have here. We have 1 minute to go. And you can also see the chat. I would pick some of those questions. One question was, how long does the whole process take? Now, typically, you can do the whole ODI research process within 4 to 6 months. That's a typical experience. In the case of MACO, it took a little bit longer than that because there was also a lot of involvement of the team and a lot of learning Maybe you want to comment on this, Robert?
Yeah, especially the interview phase took us long. As I said, we started it twice because we thought we can do it on our own, but that was not the best way in the beginning. So I think it was about 8 months altogether. It was 4-month ideation, which is a completely other process, nothing to do with the core ODI process, I would say. Yeah, so altogether, I think it was a 1-year project. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Robert, and thank you very much, Robert. It's also in the chat people who say thank you, and it was great to have that presentation together with you. And thank you very much for all the participants for following us on this 1-hour morning session here. We will share the handout of that whole thing to all of you. You will get an email afterwards, after that webinar. Yeah, we are very happy to stay in contact, stay in a dialogue with you. And maybe you also want to share your viewpoints and your insights more closely, probably within the summit, or via a chat, via LinkedIn, via email. We are there, and we are looking forward. So thank you very much, and happy innovating, and stay close to your customers to create value for the people out there. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you also from my side. Thanks, Martin. Thanks to the audience. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.